welcome to another Lakehead International Live. My name is Jordan. I'll be the host and moderator today. I'm joined by a few special guests and we'll introduce them in just a moment. Of course, Faculty Friday is a part of the Lakehead International Live series. It's a series that we started a couple of years ago, but then fully realized it at the beginning of quarantine here, and we've been live every day since the beginning of April, so we're really excited to bring in another feature from a faculty member today. Of course, as I mentioned, we're going to be covering geology, so we'll be exploring the department, the programs offered, some of the experiential learning opportunities, research opportunities, so much more. I'll dive into the agenda in just a moment, but in the meantime, I'll chat a bit about the Lakehead International Live series so you know where we've been this week, where we're going with it. We're still continuing on. So our previous lives this week, on our Monday meetup, we did our conversation club. And then on our Transition Tuesday, of course, we did our immigration session with Jennifer Hay, our in-house immigration advisor. And then on our Wednesday weekly, we had our admissions update. So we answered questions with both undergraduate and graduate admissions officers. And we definitely were busy on that webinar. And then yesterday on our Transition Thursday, we learned about cultural transition and culture shock as you transition to Lakehead University. Of course, our upcoming lives include our Transition Tuesday immigration session with Jennifer. Monday is a holiday here in Canada for us, so Lakehead University will be closed the entire day, and unfortunately we won't be able to bring a live to you, but we'll be back next Tuesday, and then of course we'll make up for our Monday the following time. Something to keep in mind though, next week I'll be on holidays, so you'll see a few different faces hosting the webinars. But that's no worry, because I trust everyone that's going to be taken over, and they'll bring you some amazing content as well. Something else I would like to chat about, I know that I've had some issues with my internet lately, and you might see me freeze, or you might not hear my voice for a minute. Patrick, one of our co-hosts here today, he is going to step in for me if that happens at any point. I do apologize in advance. We're of course working from home, so you might not hear typical office noises. You might hear my dogs barking or Patrick's dogs barking or any number of things that you wouldn't necessarily hear in an office environment. But we're just happy to be here and joined by so many guests. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Jordan Ball. I'm the International New and Social Media Officer here on campus. I help oversee our digital recruitment efforts, as well as our social media, our live webinars, our global ambassador program for current students, which is a really exciting opportunity. And I'm sure you'll learn more about it in the coming weeks and months as I advertise more. But I'll pass it off to Patrick to introduce himself now.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Carr. I am one of the international recruitment officers here at Lakehead University. I usually work with students out of the Middle East, Africa, as well as the Caribbean. But like always, I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone around the world and represent my colleagues who are based globally, who you may have met.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. And next, I'd like to welcome and introduce Dr. Peter Hollings.
Hello everyone, my name's Pete Hollings. I'm the chair of the Geology Department here at Lakehead. I teach undergraduate and graduate classes, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Pete. I'm definitely excited to dive into geology myself. I want to learn a bit more about the program. I know within my role, I've definitely learned about all the programs here at Lakehead, but as I continue to host Faculty Fridays, I certainly get a more in-depth look into them. So I'm very excited for today's session. So what are we going to cover today? I know that's a popular question. This is today's agenda. We're going to do a program overview, so we'll chat about the department itself, the programs offered, and then we'll definitely go into areas of study, course selection. We'll talk about maybe some of the industry relevant courses or some of the most popular courses among our students. We'll also chat about experiential learning opportunities, student research opportunities, and last but not least, in theme with all of our Faculty Fridays, we kind of cover the full circle of completing your degree with us here at Lakehead, and we chat about your career outcomes or potentially continuing your education to the next level of academia. Things to remember on today's session, some of my housekeeping notes. If you like what you see, don't worry. We'll definitely be sending out a link to the recording. So after today's session, we edit the video and post it on our YouTube channel. All of our previous lives, or most of them at least, are on our YouTube channel already. But every week on Saturday, we send out a invite for the next upcoming week, as well as the links to all of our recordings from the previous week. If you do have questions and you're joining us on our Zoom webinar, you can certainly use the Zoom Q&A function to submit those questions now. If you're over on our Facebook live stream, you can comment on that video, and we do have Sylvia, one of our Lakehead experts behind the scenes, helping us answer questions over there. And last but not least, I always encourage our audience members, as it is a part of my job, to follow us on our social media channels. I work really hard to make sure that students get a good sneak peek as to what Lakehead University is all about, but also provide you with the important updates out of the university administration, so major announcements, but also updates for future live events that you could participate in. Without further ado, though, we'll dive into the topic at hand, geology, and I'm really excited, as I mentioned, to dive into this one. I think it's best probably to pass it over to Pete to chat about sort of a high-level program overview, what happens in the department, what programs are offered, all that sort of stuff.
Thanks, Jordan. So I would say our primary program is our Honours Bachelor of Science in Geology. That's the main program we run. It's a very traditional geology program. We teach our students the fundamental skills to how to identify rocks, map rocks, understand how they form. It's a program that's really respected by industry and government, so our students have a really easy time getting jobs at the end of it. We also have an earth science degree, which is like a slightly more broader, I guess, scope, slightly more diverse program. And then we run a number of multidisciplinary programs, including the environmental studies program, which has a stronger focus on issues around the environment and water quality and the impact of mining. There's a geoarchaeology program we run with the Department of Anthropology. And then we have our water resource science program. You can actually see that photograph you're looking at now. That's Dr. Amanda Diashon on the left. She's the professor who runs that program. And that program, again, has this really strong focus on water quality issues, both sort of natural water like rivers and lakes, but then also mines and things like that. So we're a really diverse program. We take huge advantage of our location here in Northern Ontario. Unlike many universities, the rocks are, on campus. We actually start teaching our second year field school right outside the university building. And then as students get more and more skills, we take them further and further away to see the incredible diverse range of rocks we have. And in many universities in Canada, you have to drive 4 or 5 hours to get rocks. So we're blessed. And that means we can do a lot of experiential learning. We do a lot of field trips, a lot of field schools, getting our students hands-on with the rocks as much as we can. I would say, one of the real strengths of our program is that at the end of it, you can end up with what we call a professional geoscientist registration. This is a requirement now to work as a geologist in Canada. And our program is designed so that at the end of the day, you have every course you need to qualify for that program. So that's a big deal for us. We work hard to make sure that our students are employable at the end of the day.
Awesome. Well, thank you for introducing the faculty itself, and it's obviously exciting to hear that we're recognized so highly so that our students can graduate with that designation and then be eligible, of course, to move right into the career field after graduation, if that's what their choosing is. Of course, we covered some of the programs that are both the core programs, but also the multidisciplinary programs. And as you mentioned, the professor in the photo here on the left is out of the Water Resources Science program. So we're happy to answer questions both about geology, but of course some of the programs within the overall department. So to a reminder to our viewers, of course, if you have any questions, we'll definitely take a shot at them online today. If we can't necessarily answer them live, we're happy to follow up with you with detailed answers as well. A popular question, Pete, that we get from plenty of students is sort of, what areas of study or what specializations can they complete? Because of course we like to talk about when students complete a general degree or a high level degree, they want to know what specifics are they going to learn, or can they tweak their degree at all to maybe fit their passions a bit more. So could you chat a bit about that?
Sure. So there's an easy answer and a hard answer for that one, I guess. For the main geology program, the courses you need to take are fairly prescriptive. So you have to take a set number of courses, and that comes back to that professional registration. but there is enough room in the program. There's electives, there are things like that, so people can take a minor, for example. They might want to take a minor in geography or even a minor in language. All these are really things that are, give them the opportunity to do that. Also, if they go into some of the other programs, like the environmental studies program, that's a lot more flexible in terms of the courses people can take. And you can get a lot more biology and geography and a much more diverse range of topics. So it really depends what people are interested in. And one of the things we like to do in first year is meet with our students and sort of talk with them and find out where their interests are and make sure that very early on in the program, they get directed into the right stream to help them get the most as they can out of their Lakehead experience.
For sure, yeah, and that's something that I always like to chat about in my offerings to students, is kind of making sure that not picking a program just based on sort of what you've heard about it necessarily, but picking a program based on understanding that it's going to match with your interests, because we know that a student that is most interested about certain programs will be the most successful in that same program. And we get a really popular question, sort of, what are the popular programs in Canada, or what are all the students doing nowadays? And of course, you might have your typical STEM type programs, but that's never something that we recommend as in take this program because it's simply popular. We always recommend take the program because you have a passion for the subject at hand, or you are interested in exploring and developing a passion for that program. And I think that is a nice segue next into our course selection. You mentioned that students can have a structured course selection within geology, but would you mind chatting about some of the popular courses that you see students picking maybe as electives, or if it's a prescribed course, the ones that they really, really enjoy, maybe based on the hands-on work or the opportunities they're blend well within?
I would say in terms of the prescriptive courses that students really enjoy, a lot of the really popular ones are our field courses, where we go out and we spend, well, normally in May, we spend a week mapping some of the rocks around town, understanding that. And those are really good chances to bond with your colleagues in your group. You're all out there, you're all enjoying the weather, or maybe it's raining and you're not enjoying it quite as much, but it's a really good bonding experience with your peers. And then at the start of fourth year, we run a 2-week field school where we go all around town or around Northern Ontario looking at stuff. So those are some that are really popular. And then we have student clubs as well. We have 2 geology student clubs, and they've arranged field trips to some amazing places. They've organized trips to Iceland, to Ireland. The most recent one, they went to Spain. We've done trips to the Southwest US. So there's all kinds of chance to get that field experience. I would say from...
Sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
I was going to say for the sort of elective stuff, some of our really popular courses are our environmental geology courses, and then also our Earth and Life Through Time, which is where we talk about fossils and dinosaurs. So from elective point of views, where we get a lot of students outside of the program, those are the fun courses they take.
For sure, yeah. We have one of our students that we've worked with quite a bit. Her name is Michelle. She's from Malaysia. She was on the experiential field trip and study abroad experience to Spain recently. So we got to catch up with her after the fact and learn more about what she had done with that. I know she's also a MyTax Award research recipient, which was really exciting for her. So she's had a great experience. I actually met up with her on an Instagram Live for an entire hour. She's back home in Malaysia now, but I was lucky enough to have her wait up for me. So she stayed up late at night so that I could host a session with her in the morning here in Canada. And it was a great conversation. She spoke quite highly of the program itself, and she was chatty about sort of what her last year in the program is going to look like. And it sounds pretty interesting, to say the least. And then another thing that I wanted to chat about is we talked about electives and sort of being able to specialize your degree to an extent based on your passions. And I know another thing that, as you mentioned, students can also take minors outside of the department. So you don't necessarily have to have a minor within a science field. Even you could have it within business or a social sciences and humanities aspect. I think that students maybe in geology that might have a passion for working on their own, that might want to be their own geologist and have their own company at some point, they might be interested in potentially even minoring in a business major, or there are certificate programs for entrepreneurship and learning some of the business aspects of it. so that they have the knowledge of geology, of course, the practice of their passion, but then they'll understand the general workings of how to run a business and whatnot. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility, and I encourage students that if you're interested in learning more about some of the minors, you can certainly check out the academic calendar. And all of the minors are listed within each of the respective faculties. We have 10 faculties here at Lakehead University. And if you have any questions, I encourage you to connect with us here at Lakehead International at welcome@lakeheadu.ca. I'm just going to double check to see on the Q&A if we've received any questions. I know we are answering some behind the scenes. Looks like we haven't received any quite yet. I'll remind our viewers, if you have questions for Patrick, myself, or Pete about geology or the department itself, please don't hesitate to ask us. If you're on the Zoom, of course, use the Zoom Q&A chat. If you're on Facebook, you can comment on that video, and our Lakehead expert Sylvia is behind the scenes helping answer those as well. So the next topic I wanted to chat about is experiential learning opportunities. And I know it's a high level question, but I'm curious, does Lakehead have any experiential learning opportunities within the community or within the organization, within the faculty and professors itself?
Yeah, so we do a variety of things. We don't have a formal co-op program like some of the faculties and departments do across Lakehead. But what we do have is really good relationships with local companies and local government organizations. So what that means is that pretty much every summer, our students can find jobs working with the local mining companies or the local exploration companies or the Ontario Geological Survey. These are the main organizations that hire our students as summer students. I see there's a question there from Aidan about talking about whether these companies come to campus. They don't really do it formally like that because we're such a department that's so tightly linked with the local companies. Thunder Bay is a really small town. We know all the geologists in town. We work really closely with them. Often they'll just send us an email saying, I'm looking for 3 students to work for us for the summer. Can you pass it around? And then we'll engage with our students and get them working. So that's one way we do it. The other really good way we do experiential learning is students have the opportunity to work with professors over the summer if you want. There's a number of different organizations. You mentioned MyTax is one, but there's also NSERC, the Undergraduate Study Research Awards. There's all sorts of different things we can do. I think we have 3 USRAs this summer, if I remember rightly. So we've got these students working with professors. They're doing research and not just made up, busy work. These are genuine research projects. Some of that might lead to their honors thesis if they go that way and they do research. Other stuff, it can just be learning how to do research, helping the professors, learning the different projects. So we're really engaged in that thing. And I think as programs go, geology is a really big sort of focus on that experiential learning, because the rocks are outdoors. The rocks aren't inside in the office. You have to get outside. You have to go and look at the rocks to understand what's going on.
For sure, yeah. And speaking about some of those experiential learning opportunities, of course, many people consider these opportunities as external opportunities. So whether they're outside of the classroom environment or whether they're, as you mentioned, in the summer. But I know built into, as you were just prefacing, that built into almost every course within the program itself, there's opportunities to get involved and get hands-on with the work. And that's probably one of the most important aspects of a degree such as geology, is to have that hands-on work and actually know exactly what you're doing with the program and what you get a feel for when you're holding a rock and you actually get to examine it and use the microscopes, but then also use any of the important equipment that you might see in a typical field environment or a typical, you said mining industry. I know that mining industry in Northwestern Ontario is definitely booming right now. And that's a positive note for our graduates too, because I'm sure that will equate to more opportunities in the career after graduation.
You're right, Jordan. And the other thing I'd say is, because we're a relatively small university, the undergraduate students get access to state-of-the-art research techniques. We have a really good analytical labs down here on campus. And, maybe the big school, only the grad students get here. Our undergraduates get to do really exciting research. And as an example of how important that'd be, 2 of our honors students this year have just had papers published in peer-reviewed international journals, right? And that's really exciting, and it shows that our projects are real research, they're publishable, and these students are doing really exciting stuff. So I'm really proud of our faculty and our students who can generate these really exciting projects.
For sure, yeah. And so we did just receive a question. I'll pass it off to you. I don't want to screw up some of those names, so I'll let you read those ones out.
Yeah, so Aiden's asked again about geophysics and geoarchaeology. The geoarchaeology program is really good here because we do combine the core things you need to know from geology, and we have a really good anthropology department. So those programs work really well together. In those programs, there's a lot of focus on understanding lithics, so stone tools, things like that. There's aspects of geophysical applications. You learn how to apply the more geological side. We have a prof here called Matt Boyd, who's a geoarchaeologist. He does all that sort of stuff, and it's a really good opportunity to work into there. Our geophysics program is not our strongest program here at Lakehead. It's one of those things that you really have to be specialized in. We have one course in geophysics within the degree, but if you're looking to do more of the sort of the seismic and the stuff that maybe is applicable to some of the oil industry stuff, then I'll be honest, Lakehead's probably not the program for you. We do a really good geology program, basic geology, and to be honest, if you want to become a geophysicist, that's what you need. Most of the folks I know who are now working in the oil industry from Lakehead got their geophysics experience in the masters. So, one of the things we always say is, or I always say, is come to a small school for your undergraduate where the profs know you really well, you get a really good hands-on education, and then if you go on to a graduate degree, that's where you get that hands-on experience in those advanced techniques.
For sure, and I know we'll definitely cover that, the full cycle of continuing on either into education or right into the career, where we'll have the opportunity to chat more about sort of where we've seen our graduates go, maybe into that graduate level of study, as you mentioned, where they might be able to specialize. But I really like your note about having the experience with a smaller university where you're going to get that hands-on experience. You're going to be in a small classroom environment and get to know your professors, which I think in most cases will allow you the opportunity to connect with your professors on a deeper level, but also have an understanding and be able to access more supports, which then in turn hopefully will get you that higher mark that will get you into a graduate course that is your absolute dream, that of course will lead to your absolute dream job too. We have another question. So my question is, has the university run a program of industrial relationship? So that's a great question. Pete, do you have an answer for that related to geology?
Yeah, so I think what Daniel's asking there is do we have that co-op program where there's an official time where a student might go and do an internship as part of the program? And the answer to that one is no, we don't really. We don't do a co-op program. And the reason for that is mainly because the summer, because of the weather, the climate we have here in Northern Ontario, that's the time to go out in the field. That's the time to go and work with industry. So we encourage our students and we support our students to get experience with industry over that summer. In the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, I don't think any of our students who have not wanted to get industrial experience over the summer have been unable to do so. As you mentioned, Jordan, the mining industry is big up here. There's a lot of exploration going on. It's a big part of the economy. And as I said, we're really connected with the local community. I know most of the mining companies. I go and visit them. I have a drink with them in an evening. I know them really well. So it's really easy to place our students over the summer and have them working.
For sure. And something else, a factoid that I recently learned about, for all of university students, all of Lakehead University students in the academic year of 2019 to 2020, 100% of our students were involved in experiential learning opportunities. So that speaks to, of course, the broad overview of the entire university programming and academic calendar. But obviously, I know based on my experience and what I've heard about geology, it's definitely taken to another level with all of the field work and all of the opportunities that you get to go into the field. And as you mentioned, and as we've talked about now, is not necessarily the formalized relationships or co-op programs, but the connections that we're able to establish among yourself, but also your colleagues within the faculty, within the department that also have their own connections and are always looking to support students and always looking to push opportunities to students that are looking for that sort of work. The next topic that I wanted to chat about, and I think it's kind of covered all within the same realm, is student research opportunities. So I'm curious to know, I know we talked about some of our students being published in international academic journals, but what are some of the other research projects that you've seen students involved in recently, whether it be some of their honor theses or whether it's a student working directly with one of our professors? Could you chat about that a bit?
Sure. I think, for us, the undergraduates are a really good opportunity to engage with them in research, to see if they enjoy it, to see if they like it. And then, it gives you a sense of what's a good project for them for an honors thesis, which is a part of their final year of the degree. It's a big chunk of work. So they do a fair bit of, effort into those projects. We have, I think, all kinds of potential. In normal years, all of us would be in the field all summer out there looking at rocks, trying to understand how these things work. And we need a field assistant. We need helpers. And so typically we would hire undergraduates to do that, to come out in the field with us. And part of it's a safety thing, but it's also a really good opportunity for those students to learn about research. We might be doing a remote float plane trip up to a lake in Northern Ontario, or taking a boat out onto Lake Superior to go and look at some of the geology out there. So there's all kinds of really cool things we can do. And it can happen very early on. I've hired students out of first year to be assistants for my graduate students when they're in the field. So there's always opportunities to get out there. One of those students went on to do an honors thesis with me. He's now doing his master's with me. So these things build into research careers, right? It's an opportunity for me to find out if I like the student, if they work really hard and they do really well. It's a chance for the student to find out if they can stand working with me or one of my colleagues, right? Maybe they decide that being in the bush all day is not what they want to do. So there's different things. But yeah, that research side of it and leading to publication or to, we encourage our students to go to conferences and present their results, even in the undergraduate level, to give them a chance to see what that experience is like and to network. So again, it's just a really good chance for students to get a taste of what's out there and what potentially they might want to do.
For sure. And we have another question from Aiden. It says, what does paleontology look like at Lakehead University? So I don't know if you can speak to that, but I know I can certainly touch on our Paleo DNA Lab briefly. Sure. If you wanted to do your part first, if you have something to add.
Yeah, for sure. So again, the paleontology side of thing is not a strong focus for Lakehead. We teach it at an undergraduate level. We have a course called Earth and Life Through Time. But we're not like, say, University of Alberta, where they've got the Badlands there with all sorts of dinosaur bones. Most of the rocks around us don't have a lot of fossils in. They're too old. So it's not become a real focus for us. But saying that, the paper I mentioned, one of our honors students just published in an international journal, was looking at fossils, these ancient things we call stromatolites, which are like pond scum, ancient pond scum, which has settled to the bottom of these things. And around Thunder Bay, we have some of the oldest examples of those. And Sadie, who was doing the honors thesis on that, was just being published. She worked on those. She studied them for her thesis. And we worked with one of my colleagues, Dr. Phil Freilich, who's an expert in that area. So there is scope there for students to do paleontology, but it's not one of the strongest focuses of our program.
For sure. And also speaking to the Paleo DNA Lab, it's something that I know I'm always happy to chat about. I know that we're recognized as one of the top 3 Paleo DNA labs in the world. And that's something that we talk about because it's a significant recognition for the entire world when you take into consideration how many labs are out there, paleo labs are out there, and to be recognized as some of the top ones, even though we are a relatively small university. I know that they also focus on external services within our community, but they've also received some amazing articles of research material from around the world to then be analyzed within our lab. It's actually in the building that I typically work in on campus, and it's just above our offices. We did a quick tour of it recently. Before we were moved off of campus, we had a nice tour or an open house for our entire building, so I got to walk through and see some really cool things within the lab. It certainly was outside of my realm, though. I'm a business graduate from Lakehead University, and I did marketing and human resources, so I didn't necessarily understand all of the technologies, but it was certainly cool to see all of the advanced and massive equipment that is housed within that center, and that our faculty members and professors and many students get to also be involved in too. I hope that answers your question, Aidan, and thank you, Pete, for elaborating on course offerings and how we work it into our programming here at Lakehead. We do have another question, a couple questions about admission requirements and our biology program here at Lakehead. I'll have our Lakehead expert behind the scenes answer that question just so we can focus on today's topic of biology, or geology. But otherwise, if you do have any questions for myself or Pete or Patrick, don't hesitate to ask those. I'm going to move on to the next slide where we come full circle almost. I know that we've talked about now the overall general core programs, the multidisciplinary programs, graduate programs, all that sort of stuff. And then we went into experiential learning opportunities, student research opportunities, and then we come to graduation. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list of the career opportunities that you could have out of geology. But Pete, if you wouldn't mind maybe just highlighting some of these and maybe also adding on if you've seen students go into other fields or really interesting careers, could you touch on those as well?
Sure. You know, I would say that from a geologist, there are basically 3 career paths open to you. You go and work for the mining industry, and that might be gold mining, you know, metal mining that we see here in Northern Ontario, or maybe working with the oil industry in Alberta. You can go and work for government at the various geological surveys. We have provincial geological surveys and the federal geological surveys, and we have Lakehead grads working with pretty much a lot of Lakehead grads with the Ontario survey. We have Lakehead grads with the Geological Survey of Canada, and there's folks working in Manitoba with the survey there as well. So we've got a strong network there. And then the third option, you can become an academic like me. It's a long path, but you can do it. You have to get your master's, your PhD. But you know, for me, that the reason to become an academic was I like the freedom of being able to research what I want, interacting with students. So there are those sort of different paths that are available to you in that respect. If I think about our recent graduates, and I would say probably 30% have gone on to do a master's program, and then the remaining 70% are probably working either with the government surveys or with industry. If you go to work for industry, it could be everything from working from a junior mining company and going out into the bush and siting drill wells and doing all sorts of exciting stuff like that, and hiking through the bush looking at the different types of outcrop and rock. Or maybe you go and work for a major mining company, one of the sort of multinational companies, and that maybe takes you around the world, going to look at different sorts of things in different deposits and different styles of mineralization. I've always loved geology because it's
I don't know if, Pete, you might be frozen just on my end, and it might be my internet connection that's frozen your computer.
I'm sorry?
You were frozen there just for about 20 seconds on my end, but I think it's probably my side of the internet
Jordan,
connection.
Jordan, I'm going to jump in and say, Dr. Hollings, you're fine. I think, Jordan, the connection is on your side. No need to repeat yourself.
Fair enough.
Okay. I forgot where I was now. So, you know, it's the opportunity to travel, to go and see different kinds of geology in different kinds of places. That's what excites a lot of our students about the program. But we also have some students who decided after they finished their degree, they didn't want to go and work in the bush, you know, getting eaten by mosquitoes for 3 months of the year. It wasn't for them. They didn't enjoy it. And they're now working in analytical laboratories here in town, or they've gone into a whole bunch of, I have some of my students who are working for the finance industry in Toronto, working with companies, sort of assessing whether you know, new mines are viable opportunities, and they need geologists to make those assessments. So there's a really broad range of career paths available to you. It really depends what you're interested in. You know, the hydrogeology side of things, looking at water quality, you know, that environmental side of things, all of those are really useful skill sets. They're really transferable skill sets. And, you know, as I said, if I look at the local companies in town, there's Lakehead grads everywhere. And I'm really proud of that. It's great to have all those connections. And that's great for new students because it makes it easier for us to plant Lakehead students in there in summer jobs or recommend them. You know, those people know about the quality of the Lakehead program and know how good our students are.
For sure, and I've definitely experienced that myself where Lakehead graduates understand sort of the program offerings, the workings of a graduate, and sort of what the basics that they learn are, and the confidence that they have within their own degree, and our teachers and our professors and faculty members allows them to have the same confidence in our graduates and hiring them within maybe a first couple months of graduating, if not having a job lined up. I know that for the entire university, it's 96.7% of our graduates are employed within 2 years of graduation, which is an extremely high percentage when you take into consideration what the Ontario average is. I believe it's roughly around 93 right now, and ours has continued to increase over the years. So that's something, a positive note there to always mention and preface. Another thing I wanted to dive into, and kind of looking at the two different paths you have after wrapping up your degree within maybe geology, is we've talked about the career path, but then could you dive into sort of the continuing education path? For example, if a student was to complete, an undergrad or even just a master's, where have we seen them going after that within education, or where might we see them go within another professional designation using their undergrad or graduate degree as kind of the basis for that?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as I said, sort of probably about 30% of our students go on to do undergraduate or to do a master's degree. I have one student I've just recruited now to start in September who's been working in industry for 2 or 3 years with an undergraduate degree, decided that, okay, I don't see the promotion opportunities within my company that I would like, so he's coming back to do a master's with us. And once you've got your master's, it increases the ability, or enhances your ability to get slightly higher positions within companies than perhaps you could before, or opens the door for a PhD. We've had a number of our students go on and do PhDs. A lot of my students have ended up doing PhDs at Australian universities because I have connections with people out there who are always looking for good students. So they get to go and live in Australia for a few years. You know, so there's all those different opportunities. In terms of the career path, again, most of our students end up working in geoscience in some form, whether it's in mining companies or government. But some, like I said, have gone into the banking side of the world. You know, they're working on Bay Street down in Toronto, or with the Toronto Stock Exchange, you know, doing assessments of mine prospects. So there are different pathways and different opportunities available depending on what you're interested in.
For sure, and I think that also kind of circles back or ties really nicely into our discussion about being able to craft your degree in a way of adding your own minors or selecting your electives, and being able to take classes based on what your passions and where your passions lie. Of course, that speaks directly then into the career outcomes or the continuing education outcomes, as to you can apply to a breadth of jobs, a vast majority of the jobs. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what jobs are you truly interested in, and what jobs are you going to see fulfill that burning passion within geology or within the sciences and geosciences that you mentioned. I'm going to head over to our Q&A. I see we have another question that just popped up. So Aiden said, do undergrads have any kind of priority in terms of gaining access to the hands-on geology equipment and instruments, or do I have to wait until I'm a graduate to get that kind of hands-on access? How much is really hands-on for undergrad? So that's a really great question. I think that the answer is a positive one too. So I'll let you chat about that.
Yeah, no, Aidan, that is a really good question. So because we're a small department, what that means is very early on, you have access to all the sort of tools and equipment you need. You get assigned your own petrographic microscope for working on your labs and helping to understand thin sections. In terms of, you know, the advanced analytical equipment that we have here, it's relatively easy as an undergraduate to get access to those tools through your professors working in research projects. So, you know, as I said, our honors students do really meaningful science. It's not just busy work projects, and they can get that work published. And part of that is because we have access to that equipment, and we make that equipment available to our honors, whether it's the scanning electron microscopes or the ICP, the analytical tools like the XRD, X-ray diffraction. There's all sorts of tools we have here to help us understand the rocks and what makes up the rocks. And as an undergraduate, working with professors, it's not like you can walk down to the room and just, walk in and use them, but you can work with the professors. We can make it available, and you will be actually the one sitting there using the machine, learning how to do it. It's not just sort of this here's a, you give someone a box of rocks and a week later your data comes back. You will be generating your own data. So I think that's one of the things about our program I'm really proud of. It's one of the things that I think makes it unique and gives students that really experiential experience, right? That chance to actually get their hands dirty and really go and figure things out.
For sure, and I think that's something that we've heard about. No particular one other institution, just in general, that when you go to some of the major institutions that see 20, 30, 40, 50,000 students, you might have only your highest graduates, graduate level students, master's students, PhD students working on some of this really advanced technology. Whereas in this case, undergrads and all of our students have access to technology, and it's worked into the program and built into that program, which is something that I also always like to talk about. Another running joke that I have is that for students that are interested in assisting faculty members and looking for even more hands-on work, I'm sure almost all faculty members and professors would be happy to take you on in a volunteer aspect. Who wouldn't like free labor in a sense, and who wouldn't like help from a student who has the experience with that instrument or with that technology to then work back some of their research. Because at the same time, while our professors and faculty members are teaching these courses, running the field schools, planning the academic calendar, all that sort of stuff, they're also conducting their own research, and they're also writing and participating in academic reviews, peer reviews, journals, all that sort of stuff. So that's definitely, you've done your work, and as you mentioned, it was a long path for you, doing many levels of degrees to then be in higher education and academia to become a professor. But that's something that for many students, that might be one of their goals as well. And so getting that experience and even learning the inner workings of being a professor might be something that you could be involved in right from the outset of your university career.
And I think that comes back to that idea that, it's a small university, it's a small department. So your interaction with your professors, your chance to have a, sit down maybe over a beer at the end of a day in the field and actually and get the inside story on what it's like to be a professor, what it really means to go and work in industry, you get experiences and access that you don't get at a bigger school. And we have seminar series with our undergrads and graduates attend. We have, a number of social events where we get everyone together. So there's really good interaction. And because of those two student geology clubs, we have, the undergrads mix across the 4 years, and with the grad student, it's a really tight-knit group of people. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss not to mention with those clubs where first-year students can join as the general body within the club, and then you might see your upper years, second, third, and fourth year students sitting and holding some of the executive positions within that club, whether they're structured to have a president and a communications officer, a vice president of finance, that sort of stuff. You also then have access to those upper year students who have most likely taking the exact same courses as you, the ones that are prescribed, but also there's a strong potential that they've taken some of the electives and they might be able to guide you or assist you. Something I always like to talk about is the fact that with smaller classroom environments, it's not just the access to your professors that you're granted, it's also the connections you're able to establish with your peers and your classmates, which then allows you to, if it's from the outset allowed by the professor to work together on projects or you have assistance with each other, of course, that's a consideration too when you're considering sort of how will you get all the work done, and what if you're stumbling or struggling with certain topics. You might understand and fully grasp one concept, and then your friend or your classmate might grasp a totally different concept, and together you two can help each other learn and grow from there, which I always like to mention because that certainly was my experience in the business degree. Over the 4 years, I established an amazing friend group, and I still am seeing them all day, every day now. We're all in Thunder Bay here, so it's great to stay connected with them, and even still think back onto some of the classes we've had in the past few years.
Yeah, it's that the shared misery of staying up till midnight to try and finish a lab, with a group of students. That's when you make those friendships with your peers that last you the rest of your life, right? So
for sure, yeah. Well, I will move on to the next slide, which is sort of my wrap up, and I'll briefly mention our social medias. In the meantime, we'll still have a couple minutes to answer questions if students want to submit their last few questions for Peter or myself or Patrick. Patrick and myself are, of course, happy to answer Lakehead's general questions. So if you want to know maybe about residents, athletics, clubs, all that sort of stuff, international student services, we're happy to chat on that. But in the meantime, I'll mention our social medias. So we are on Facebook. Lakehead University International is the page. If you actually visit our Facebook page right now, there's a group started for the incoming class of 2020. So that's all students that will be joining us. I've been adding into that group every day. I think we're close to 450 now, or at least over 400 for sure. I quite honestly haven't looked at the numbers very recently, but I'm seeing some great conversations happening over there where students are meeting, first of all, future classmates, so that they're going to have a classmate that they know they're going to the program with, but also they're meeting potential roommates. So when they do arrive here in Orillia or Thunder Bay, potentially they can be setting up roommates and setting up external housing options as well. And last but not least, I've seen some students where they're meeting friends from their home country too. So students that might not recognize that there's several applicants within their home city around the world, and they could actually be meeting up in the coming months. And for an online fall semester, if they aren't able to join us here in Canada, they could potentially still be meeting up with Lakehead, fellow Lakehead students in their hometown, which is always exciting. We're also on Instagram, Lakehead International. We're on Twitter, Lakehead INTL, and our YouTube channel is Lakehead University. We do have 2 dedicated playlists for our international audiences. So our first one is Lakehead International. It's a general overview of the university. It's our student testimonials. You can hear from some of our past grads and alumni, as well as our current students. And our second playlist is Lakehead International Lives. So all of our webinars that we do and all of our Lakehead International Live series that we've been running for the past few months, they are recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel, typically within a few hours of me wrapping up the session or one of my colleagues wrapping up the session. And then, as I mentioned, we also send out reminders and links to those YouTube videos at the end of each week as we send out next week's invites. I'd be remiss not to mention our virtual campus tour. It's something I always think that if students get the opportunity to explore either Orillia or Thunder Bay, they check out the buildings, the facilities, the surrounding environment too, and how beautiful our campus is. We're very fortunate to work here at Lakehead University and have such a beautiful campus, but of course for our students, they're also fortunate and lucky enough to study on such a beautiful campus. And I think that once you're able to explore and see where you'll be in the near future, you'll also most likely be sold on our community here that we're building. I'm gonna just quickly head over to the Q&A. Looks like we didn't receive any in the meantime. Pete, I'll pass it off to you if you have any last few words to chat about, and then we'll wrap it up.
I don't know if I do. I just say that we have a great program here. We've had an increasing number of international students come through our program. We'd love to see more of you join us. It's a really exciting opportunity to either stay in Canada or develop skill sets which you can take back home with you. So please come and join us.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us, Pete. I learned quite a bit myself. I'm sure our audience members learned quite a bit. We answered plenty of questions too that were very appreciated on our end. So thank you again. Without further ado, though, I'll wrap it up. I'll say bye to everyone, and hopefully everyone will be joining us next Tuesday with Jennifer Hay for our Transition Tuesday immigration session. Alrighty, bye for now.